How's it going, everybody? Today I'm going to be going over 10 tips that are going to get your disc golf player rating above 900. Now, if you're watching this and you're already above 900 rated player, don't worry, these tips can still be useful for you, but this video is specifically catered to those players who are stuck on that infamous 900 rated plateau. Now, although I may not be a professional disc golfer by any means, I've been an above 900 player for a very long time, and I understand that there are a few key changes you can make to your strategy when you go into a tournament that can drastically change and improve your player rating for the better. And the best part is, many of these techniques don't even require much practice. It's all about mindset and strategy. There are a few skill-based ones as well, but each one of these is going to be a building block that gets you closer and closer to breaking through that 900 rating. And I'm confident that many of you who are just beneath 900, just kind of stuck there, getting close, or maybe you hover right around there, are going to bump up a few ratings points if you take these tips and use them. Now, I should mention that many of these tips are pretty extremely targeted at those who are really just trying to bump above that 900 rated zone. What you'll find in disc golf is when you're playing the ratings game and you're just trying to improve your tournament performances and get your rating up, the tips I give you today might not be useful if you're trying to become 1,000 rated, or even if you're an upper 900s rated player. I would say that like I mentioned, some of them will apply to those who are in those categories, but a lot of these tips are going to be for players who are in the low 900s to anywhere below 900. That's really where these are for the sweet spot. But you may learn something even if you are a more advanced player. Even as somebody who's usually rated 950 to 970, there are a lot of these principles that I could use in tournaments to have a lot more success more often. So I won't delay any longer. We're going to fire right into them. 10 tips in no particular order. Let's get into it. Our first tip is quite simple, as are many of the tips in this video, and that is to simply shrink the bag. Now, do I mean taking your entire bag down to 3 discs? No, that was mostly for dramatic effect. But a lot of the tips in this video are centered around simplifying your strategy on tournament day. Why? Because during a disc golf tournament, you're going to be nervous, there's going to be adversity and stress, and so if we can take our actual game plan and make it as black and white as possible, we're going to have the most success on the course, especially when we're trying to shoot 900 rated golf. 900 rated golf is not some masterpiece performance, right? Even those of you who are still working your way up the ranks, you can understand that on any given course, the 900 rated score isn't something that's unattainable. You just have to work towards it and make certain steps and avoid certain pitfalls to get there. So that's the focus here. And the first step is, before we even get to the course, potentially shrinking our bag. Why do we do this? Because it eliminates some of the decision making we have to do on the course. So I'm going to use my bag for an example here. I usually have anywhere from 22 to 24 discs in my bag. But in any given tournament round, I may only throw 6 to 10 of those discs, right? It just depends on what the course is asking for. But not having a ton of options, not only is it something you may not be defaulting to anyways, like I said, I may only throw 10 of my discs, but if we actually are intentional and shrink down our bag, it doesn't even give our brain the chance to think through all the shots that maybe we shouldn't even be throwing. A lot of times we are looking for too specific a disc when really we should just be throwing something we're comfortable with and throwing lines we're more comfortable with. And we'll be getting to that point in one of the later tips, more of the throwing strategy related to this. But I would say if you're somebody who's struggling to get over that 900 rated mark and you have 22 plus discs, some people have as much as 30 discs, maybe try shrinking that bag a little. And like I said, this might not mean shrinking it down to 3 discs, that's not the point. But if you have 25 discs, maybe tinker around with a 15 disc bag. Cater it to the course you're playing at. If you know where your tournament round is going to be, you can know what kind of shots you're going to need and therefore cater your bag accordingly. But just see the kind of effect that has on you in practice. I find that the less discs I have, it immediately changes my decision making on the tee pad, because now I'm not doing nearly as much thinking. I mean, sometimes we have so many discs that it really comes down to, wow, I have 4 discs I could throw this shot with. Which one do I like the most today? And that's just unnecessary. That's thinking we don't have to do. We have a limited amount of space in our brain to be doing thinking on tournament day. Let's reserve more of it for the goal we're trying to accomplish and not whether I want to throw the pink driver or the blue driver, because they both hyzer flip and turn over, you know? It doesn't have to be that difficult. So that's why our first tip is simply to shrink the bag. This won't apply to everybody, but like I said, if you're somebody that already has a small bag of 15 to 18 discs, maybe just cut it down a little bit, take a few off. But if you're somebody with a huge bag of like 30 discs, I mean, chop that thing in half and just play a practice round and see how that goes. See if you're really missing certain discs. You might find that it takes a little bit of stress out of the game. Tip number 2 is one of my favorite tips. I think it's very underrated, and that is to develop a repeatable straight shot. This tip, along with one of the putting tips we'll get to later, combined make for the most effective strategy possible. This is one that you have to learn, but it's not super difficult, and once again, it really dumbs things down. We're trying to simplify the game to get over 900 rated. So what do I mean by developing a repeatable straight shot? Well, obviously disc golf courses ask for a number of different shots, turnovers, hyzers, sometimes rollers, but how often do you step up to a hole and think, if I could just throw a straight shot 200 to 300 feet in front of me, I could succeed on this hole. Whether that is a birdie or making an easy stress-free par, sometimes if we just had a fairway finder, if you will, we could have a lot more success on the course, because it'll get us the easy holes, and the tougher holes, it'll probably get the job done most of the time. So the first thing we need to do to develop this type of shot is pick the right disc. I prefer to pick a predictable disc, something that doesn't vary a ton off of its line. For that reason, I think it makes sense to go with something that isn't too understable. Now, when I tell you to throw a straight shot, some people will immediately think of a hyzer flip to flat, whereas some people will think of throwing a disc flat and letting it go flat. That's a sort of a player preference, but I wouldn't recommend getting too extreme if you do like to throw on hyzers. There's a reason that players like Gannon Buhr are so dominant, and it's because he loves to throw flat shots with reliable discs. It makes the game very predictable. So if you do like to throw on hyzer, maybe just pick a disc that you can throw baby hyzer with. Because the problem is, if I take a disc, if I like to throw on this much hyzer, and I need a flippy disc to do so, if I mess up that angle, it can end in a variety of different shots when we're looking for something very consistent. So if we're just throwing something nice and level or close to level, you tend to get a more consistent result. You just kind of have to find the disc that works. So for instance, for me, I would throw something like this Stalker, and the goal is to get really good at throwing a straight shot about 80 to 85% of your distance. Boom. Something that looks like that right there. Something where I'm poking that out, I'm gonna hit a tight gap that might scare me off the tee, I'm gonna make forward progress down the fairway, and even if I didn't park the hole, I'm getting off the tee. Because what's one thing a lot of AMs struggle with is getting off the tee. And if we can get really good at just that one shot over and over again, we can continue using it. Because another thing, like I said, with our dumbing it down strategy is, the less we have to think on the tee, the better. And if we know, okay, every time we get up to a shot that can fit that mold, we're just gonna throw that same repeatable flat straight shot, I mean, we can tear up a course with that. Like, throwing dead straight 300 feet is incredibly underrated. It works, it really does. You don't need all these crazy lines and crazy distance. A lot of holes, that right there does the job. And if you like to go with a little hyzer, you can do that too. There you go. That was basically the exact same shot, just a little flippier disc on baby hyzer. But practice that shot over and over and over again to where it's your get out of jail free card. You can use it on as many holes as you need. That is going to be a game changer for you. Seems very simple, but players like to overthink. Get good at throwing a shot as straight as possible. Don't have to crush it, just have to move down the fairway. Our next tip basically piggybacks directly off the last two, shrinking your bag and developing that accurate straight shot, and that is to forget the distance drivers and disc down. That's right, I've found that even if distance is your specialty, beating a course with accuracy outweighs distance when you're just trying to shoot 900 golf, right? We're just trying to navigate the course in a somewhat efficient way to put up respectable rounds. That's what we're doing. And for that reason, throwing the more accurate, more controllable fairway drivers is better. And even for people that are out there like myself, who I actually find that I think I can hit lines just as easily with distance drivers. I like the feel of the wide rim. I can still admit that the flight of a fairway driver is usually a lot more tight and compact. They don't have nearly as much low speed unpredictability. They don't skip away as much. They stay in the middle of the fairway where we want them. So while it's not super fun and it can be very hard to do, especially if you step up to a wide open, reachable par 4 and you just want to let loose, let's play smart, conservative golf, disc down, see what that does for you, right? Maybe instead of trying to go for the bomber shot, let's go for placement. Maybe even disc all the way down to a mid-range or a putter. Keeping the disc in play is going to be a game changer. Stay away from that OB, keep it in the middle, disc down. Don't be scared. It's a lot of fun. Hitting fairways is way more fun than 1 out of every 5 shots blasting one down the middle, in my opinion. And if you're not 900 rated yet, maybe it should be your opinion too. I know some of you watching so far might think that this sounds like disc golf for dummies, but that's kind of what it is. And although a lot of this list might sound like the no fun list, if you really want to try and up your rating, just give it a try. Just give some of these tips a try, package them into a strategy, take it to your local C tier and see what happens. Because this is all about optimizing our game and getting rid of the silly mistakes. And we got some more tips ahead, so just stay with me. Our next tip applies more to wooded courses, which are a lot of them, especially if you're on the East Coast, for when we throw shots that go somewhere like that. And once you've made it to your disc in the woods and you pick it up, usually what do you start doing? You find the basket and then you start looking for any gap that might lead you to that great scramble shot to save. Here's the thing, what are the odds that you're actually gonna make that shot happen? How often do you think about, well, do I wanna put myself out to where I know I'm gonna make par, or do I wanna risk hitting a tree right in front of me and now par's out of the question and we're taking bogey? I wanna encourage you to play forward progress golf. That's what I like to call it. This applies especially to par 4s and 5s that involve woods. But sometimes, instead of finding the basket, you need to find the fairway or any gap that gets you as far forward as possible. Sometimes that could even mean staying in the rough. That's right, even if the fairway or the basket is tough to get to, but hey, I have a really easy gap to rip about 150 to 200 feet down the rough just to get closer to the basket, that might be the best option. Basically, it's weighing hero shot, like let's use an example, it's a par 4, my first shot goes into the woods, okay? Wow, if I throw this hero line and I get out of the woods and through the fairway and to the basket, I could get up and down for birdie. But I could also hit the first tree and now par is tough. Or I could play this line that'll get me a good bit of forward progress. It might not land me in a great spot, but it's gonna be up there so far that I know at worst I'm jump putting up or tossing up a short approach to get a guaranteed par. That's what I mean when I say forward progress golf. It's not always draw a straight line from me to the basket and find the first gap that gets to that line. Sometimes it's just figuring out which shot gets me farthest down the fairway, closer to the distance of the approach, right? Like we're just getting, you know, if the hole's 800 feet and we threw 300 off the tee, how much more of that 500 feet can we take? How much more can we chew up before having to throw another approach? Forward progress golf. It can save you. It's all about swallowing your pride. That's a lot of these tips, swallowing your pride. My fifth tip, once again, relates to an area of practice, and that is dial it in from 150 and in. So we've thrown an amazing drive. We're in the middle of the fairway, and hey, even as a player who may be pretty average, we've got a very easy, relative to our sport, chance to convert for birdie. Look at that. The basket is about 150 feet away. It's right there. How many times as a player who's around that 900 rating do you mess up opportunities like this, right? This should be the simplest part of the game, but yet we practice this almost the least. A lot of people say putting is the most overlooked part of the game, but I disagree strongly. So many people can practice putting because it doesn't require a lot of space. People love to rip drives. I think the least practiced, most important part of the game are these upshots, these little short ones that don't take a lot of skill and they don't take long to get good at, but they will save you so much. And it's simply learning how to throw straight shots up next to the basket to take stress off your next throw. I mean, once you get good at those things, they're not difficult, they're very low pressure, and they're second nature because they don't require a lot of power and they're not super complex. But believe me, what would you say your percentage of made putts is going from 15 feet to 30? Probably pretty drastic. And that's not a ton of feet in the reference or in the scale of throwing a 150-foot upshot. So we want to make sure those shots are getting as close as possible because it could be saving us one stroke every time we get one right instead of leaving it a little astray. Practice from 150 and in, get dialed from that range because especially from 100 feet and in, there should be no reason you're not under the basket or close, even at a 900 rated ability. All right, now we're gonna talk putting for this next tip, and I'll keep this brief because I'm absolutely no expert on how to throw great putts. But what I can tell you as somebody who isn't a good putter, this tip has helped me a lot, and this is choose your putts wisely. You've probably heard this before, but the great thing about disc golf is you never have to putt if you don't want to, right? There's no rule that says once inside 30 feet, you must run this putt, or once inside 40 feet, you have to run this putt. Choose your putts wisely. Consider things like the wind, the slope, and the distance. And if a putt doesn't seem right to you, if you feel like you don't have a great chance of making it, well, lay that thing under the basket and move on. Because if we're not great putters, we probably won't like the comeback putt either. So laying up can be a great strategy, but not just laying up. That isn't the only tip here. Sometimes we may just be at a range we're not as comfortable in, and laying up also doesn't feel right because it is an opportunity maybe to score, to save a par. So maybe instead of laying up, we need to give the putter a loftier bid. We're giving it a chance to go in, but also throwing it higher and loftier so that when it comes down, it stays closer to the basket. For example, that putt missed the basket, and this is obviously exaggerated because I'm only 15 feet away, but a lot softer landing than if I were to do something like that and spin it hard past the basket to where now I have much larger comeback putts. This is something that I think a lot of players know about this and have heard this before, but it can be harder to practice and actually put into play because we get in sight of the chains and we think, ooh, this is my chance, now is the time. And sometimes you have to know your own game, and that actually goes directly into my next tip, which is to assess your risk. Tips 7, 8, and 9 are much more mental game tips and thought strategies, so I'll just go over them quickly. Tip number 7 is don't be a hero or use risk assessment. This is a thought exercise that you should use before most of your throws, really. And the exercise is simple, okay? Let's use a 60-foot putt, for example. And it goes something like this. Okay, what is the percentage that I think I might make this putt? Let's say it is 5%. Okay, now if I miss this putt, which seems like it's the much higher chance, what is the percentage I get a favorable comeback putt? Let's say in this case, I'm putting directly up a large hill. So as long as I don't get a roll away, it should be, the disc can't go super far past the basket. So okay, I should get a favorable comeback putt about 75% of the time. Well, now I can weigh those percentages that I've kind of created. All right, pretty low chance of this going in, but if it doesn't go in, I still have a very high chance of having a favorable comeback putt, and you can make that decision accordingly. And this is less about creating a exact math equation that you have figured out. Well, if I give myself 15% chance or more, I always run it. It's not about that. It's more about stopping and making yourself think through a shot and its consequences instead of just stepping up and throwing and then going, ooh. I mean, how many times have you been on a course, ran a putt, or thrown maybe an aggressive scramble shot that didn't work out, and then immediately after gone, I really should have thought that through more. So that's what this is really about. And I find that using those percentages and kind of making it a risk-reward system just makes myself think instead of just stepping up, doing, and facing the consequences. Tip number 8 is also very simple. This one is know your distances. Now, I know all of us don't have rangefinders, but typically you can use the UDisc app or find some way to gauge your distances, at least to a somewhat accurate point. There are a lot of players out there, myself included really, who don't have a great idea of their distances, and there's nothing more frustrating than hitting a line perfectly and blasting it long or leaving it way short, just knowing that I needed to disc up or disc down. And of course, there are certain factors like wind, air temperature, and such that can change things, but just knowing well how far each of your discs go is a huge thing to have in your back pocket, because once again, less thinking, right? We step up to a hole that's 240 feet and I know exactly which discs in my bag go closest to that distance. Less thinking. So that's tip number 8. And then my final mental game tip number 9, is learn how to press the reset button. A lot of golfers call this staying in the moment, the idea that you need to not look at the round as a whole, but stay in each shot as they go. I like to think about it more staying in each hole as they go. Here's another tournament scenario you're probably familiar with. You get off to an iffy start, bogeying 2 holes in a row, and you already start making this thought in your head, well, if I just birdie the next 3, I'll be right back on track. Well, if I just par this one and birdie the next one. We get so far ahead of ourselves trying to figure out how to correct what we've done, and we start looking at the round as a whole instead of worrying about the shot we have to execute next, and it almost never works out. It spirals out of control and things just combust. So what I would encourage you to do is think about your round of 18 as 18 individual challenges, and each time we get to a new tee pad, we hit the reset button. Whatever happened on the last hole, whether good or bad, it's done. There's nothing we can do about it, and we are going to play this next hole with the same strategy in mind, and we're going to attack it and do the best we can with our strategy. And this is important because so many of the things I'm telling you are a very specific strategy that you can abandon really easily if things start weighing on you and you're thinking, oh, I got to make all these birdies and do whatever. So go into each hole and attack it just as you would any other time. Now, obviously, there's times and situations, maybe towards the end of a tournament when you need to change your strategy to win. That's a whole nother thing. But especially like opening rounds, just play each hole 1 hole at a time. Don't worry about what happened before, and do not change your strategy. You will find that it is a lot more peaceful way to play golf, and your round as a collective will take care of itself. It's still going to happen the exact same way as it did. Press that reset button on each tee pad. Think to yourself, that hole is done. We're going to play this one to the best we can using our strategy and see how it shakes out, and then we're going to do it again and again and again 18 times. I've got one last tip, tip number 10, and it's the most simple of all. Just play more events. That's right. You'll find the best way to increase your rating is to play more disc golf tournaments. Not only are you going to get better, but you're going to more importantly get better under pressure and in the tournament environment, and you're going to have more chances to vet out your tournament strategies. This is what's going to increase your rating almost more than anything else I can tell you. You just have to keep playing. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I haven't done a tutorial thing in a while, so hopefully you like this. Hopefully the demographic that I was targeting got something out of this. If you're somebody who has recently broken through that 900 rated plateau, comment down below what was the thing that changed the game for you, the tip that led you to breaking that 900 rating. I'd love to read about it and hear about it. Sorry for all the airplane noises because there's about 600,000 of them in the sky today, and they're very annoying. I'll see you next Monday.